What's up everyone, it's Aaron. Today we're going to do a tutorial on C-stands. Now these are an industry standard and there's a lot of cool things that you might not know how to do with them. This will relate directly to the tutorials that are to follow, which is using flags, gels, and that type of thing. We're going to show you how to set them up, how to put flags, how to store them, and how to stay safe when you're using them. Let's get started with the basics. And that's setting up a C-stand. There's a couple different C-stands out there. I'm going to show you two different kinds just so you have a decent idea if you should come into a different kind, what you should do. For starters, I typically use Kupo, and the bottoms look like this. Now, when they're all closed up, they look like this. So a lot of times you're going to see them and they're going to be this way when they come off the truck or are in the warehouse or wherever you are. With these particular ones, they have a quick setup. So all you're going to do is pull back on this part here and then rotate it until it locks into place. That's really cool. That's something specific to Kupo. Usually though, and let me grab this Matthews stand, you're going to see something that looks a little bit more like this. This has a couple cool reasons why you'll want this as well, but let me close this up first. So, for starters, a lot of times this is what you'll see and this is what it'll look like. All you're going to do with this guy, and the best way to do it is off the ground, is rotate the tightening handle and loosen it. And then once it's loose, just use gravity to lock them into place. They usually have stops on them. Then tighten that back down and she's ready to go. You might also see some that you actually pull apart and they kind of like lift up and rotate around. I personally can't stand those C-stands, but if you do see those, best way to do it is flip them over, put the pin on the ground, and then pull them apart until all of those feet are in the right place and they're locked in place. So next, let's talk about arms, knuckles, and how you set all of that up. Okay, we're going to move on to the arms and knuckles and putting all those together, but before I do, I wanted to talk quickly about the base and why you might prefer this guy, which is also a quick setup, over the Kupo that I showed you guys. So if you see this, the one main reason is that when you loosen this up, it's able to move up and down like that. A lot of people like that because if you're on ground that isn't level, you can actually take that leg and lift it up higher. So if there's a rock, you can put it on or whatever. Also, some people say, hey, there's less mechanical things in there, there's less things that can go wrong. I really like the Kupos just for speed purposes, but I have both. Kupo also makes both, so if you're looking to stay with the same brand, that's something you could do as well. So let's talk now about putting these guys together and putting the arms and the knuckles on. So when I say knuckle, I'm referring to this piece here, and this is actually a separate piece. It kind of looks like it's one, but this comes all the way off, and this is usually what you would slide the arm through. So you're going to have a couple of holes here, big hole, a small hole. I'll show you what those are for in just a second. But you can slide the arm right through, just like that. And you can tighten it down here. Usually you'd want to do this on the stand. I just want to kind of show you guys what we're doing here. Then there's this piece here that's designed to go right on this top pin. So let's move this over so you guys can see. And then you're just going to tighten that down so it's nice and tight on the pin. Now, this comes to the first safety point that I want to talk to you about, and a lot of people who are new in the industry or who are assisting in the industry need to know this, and that's you want to put the heavier part of what you're mounting so that it rotates down to the right. And here, let me show you what I mean and why that's important. So when you put this up, and typically I'm going to put my light heads on the top here. Actually, I guess this would be considered the bottom. But you want to make sure that the heavier part, so if your light's up here, that heavier part is going to be rotating to the right. So right now, and it's on my side, so it's rotating clockwise to the right. If I pull on it, it's actually tightening itself. Whereas if I switch that, and I put it so that it was to my left, you can see this is left side or counterclockwise, what happens is, especially if it doesn't get tightened all the way, you start to pull on it, and you see it's actually loosening itself as it turns, which can be really, really dangerous. Let's say you have a light on there or a sandbag, and then God forbid that thing falls, lands on the talent or the director or whoever you have on set. So you just really want to make sure. I grew up with my dad telling me righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Just remember righty-tighty. If you need to flip it around to make sure it's to the right, then do that. But that's a super, super important. I mean, they're designed so that they're not supposed to slip, but if it doesn't get all the way, it could fall off. Another point I wanted to make with these is on the Matthews stands, you have just this kind of silver cylinder on the end, whereas on the Kupo stands, and I am not sponsored by Kupo or anything, I just use their stands, but they have a hexagonal piece on here, so there's actually like flat edges for your light to attach to. Whereas at this one, I've found that my heads will actually slip dependent upon the modifier. So if I have a huge octabox up and I'm trying to angle it a certain way, I've actually seen the screw, even tightened way down, start to slip because it's so heavy. So with these, you don't have that problem because you actually have a flat surface that you can mount your light to. With that being said, we're going to move on. I'm going to talk to you about safety, how to put weight over the right legs, where to put weights, and then we're going to move on to the next tutorial, which is going to be talking about flags. Okay, so we've gone over the rough basics. Now we're actually going to put something on our stand. For demonstration purposes, I've already put this on here, but basically you're usually going to have a screw right here. Slide that off. You'll take this, slide it right onto the end. This is for flash heads if you're using a strobe. And I brought the ELC 500 because it's pretty beefy. Then just get it nice and tight. Now again, like I said, the Kupo has this great hex head, so now this light is locked and ready to roll. Looks really, really good. Now let's talk about weights and distributing weight. For starters, this is what I talked about. Put this over this front, what we'll call the front leg. So you want to make sure the majority of the weight is sitting out over the front or the bigger leg. And I'll switch back and forth to this camera so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. The second thing is making sure there's weights, especially when there's any kind of counterbalance involved on your legs. Couple trains of thought here. The first is to put the weight on the front leg. If you only have one, to only put it on the front. I kind of disagree with that idea, and the reason is I like the idea of a counterbalance. So if I have weight over here, or my head's about this way, I like to put the weight behind it a little bit so that it keeps it from tipping forward a little bit more. That being said, one of the things that you want to do, and I have just a 15-pound, I think these are called saddlebags or something, is making sure that this weight does not touch the ground. So you'll see if you put this weight back here, it actually sits on the ground, which takes the weight off of the stand. You don't want to do that. So make sure it's either going to be on what we'll call the medium leg, which is that one there, or that front leg, which definitely keeps it off the ground and puts the weight firmly on the stand so it keeps it on the ground. Now that we've had all this stuff in place, we can take and rotate this light down. It can turn into an almost boom arm where we can put it overhead. All kinds of cool stuff happening there. The other connection you can see, and I actually kind of flagged this light for fun, I'll pull it here in just a second, is now you can flip it over and use the other side to mount things like flags, which is what we're going to talk about in the next tutorial. So let me just pull this way and you're going to get that flare back now. But so you can see, I still have weight over this front leg here, and now I can rotate this flag up and down, even up here, because that knuckle moves back and forth. I can have it back here, I can have it over here, and same thing, I can extend it out, and I'm watching that front leg. So if I'm going to go way farther out, I want to rotate this over that front leg. And then now I can do this and push it to the point where I can actually see the shadow. So I'm flagging that light here on that camera, and you can see the difference, that versus the flare, which is there. And that's the great use of C-stands. Let's leave it flagged, why not? The great use of C-stands, and this is just the beginning of all the cool stuff they will do. So we're going to wrap this one up. Next tutorial should be dropping in about a week or so, and we're going to be talking about using flags to not only control light like flare, but also to create dramatic and moody lighting. Thanks guys so much for watching, and until next time, be awesome.